All right, back at it again. Still haven't quite figured out how to get this action bar up here, but I should be able to run the lecture on gestures. Let me get my notes back up here again. And I don't think I hit the recording when I was talking about the Unit 6 notes are now available. Only about half done, but the half that I need for today. There is a Unit 6 lab that is due a week from Friday. You should see it in your Blackboard. Let's just do a double check to make sure I put it in the right place. Excuse me. That'll make for great recording. All right, here's the Unit 6, Part 1. Due November 6th. That's a week from Friday. And I've also assigned Chapter 22, the project out of Chapter 22, so do what you did for the other ones. This is one of those 2-pointers, and that's due, I'm pretty sure, this Sunday. Yep, November 1st. So that's one of those follow along in the book and learn. It'll be very similar to actually what I'm doing in class here today. But here's a hint for those of you who are busy doing your assignments. If you follow what I do in class here, it'll save you some time. It'll save you some typing when you get around to doing the lab. Or you can just type it all. That's cool by me. Okay, back to the notes. Thank you. Unit 6. In the past, you've learned how to respond to click events, but those have to be associated with an object. Your applications can also respond to other gestures. There are different kinds of gestures. There's a single tap, which is very close to a click. However, it works anywhere on the screen. And then I will, if we have enough time today, I will show you how you can sense where it was tapped, and if it's not tapped in the right place on the screen, you can ignore it or you can process it. With a click, you have to be right on target. There's a double tap. There's a long press, which is where you press and hold, and you can respond to each one of these differently. And the fun one is a fling, which is basically a swipe across the screen. And you'll see as we talk about these a little bit more that there are really other side effects that happen to these that gives you all kinds of flexibility beyond what I'm asking you to do in the assignment. What I'm asking you to do in the Unit 6 assignment is implement some of these gestures, particularly a fling, so that when you fling to the left, it shows the previous picture, and when you fling to the right, it shows the next picture. So instead of tapping, you can fling, 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 just like you do in an image viewer, and have your code wrap it all around. It's a pretty decent resource on gestures, probably takes you to the Android page. Yep, so this is the reference for the class. It talks about all the different methods that are available, what all the parameters do, etc. So that's a pretty solid reference. It's kind of cryptic because it's pretty technical. And as I just said, Android has the ability to recognize many gestures. Actually, chapter 23 in the book, I'm thinking about whether I'm going to have you do it or not, shows you how to define your own gestures. So you could define a circle gesture, or I think they use an X gesture, or a check mark, or any gesture you want, and have Android sense it and do something different. So for instance, if you were looking at a picture and the user does an X gesture, you could delete that picture. So there's all kinds of gestures that you can use, including your own. But we're just going to focus on these. I don't have any notes on those custom gestures, but the lab might be interesting just to see how it works. Before we can respond to any gestures, there's a fair amount of preparation that we have to do. The first thing we want to do, and I haven't found any way to do this automatically, is to add an implements clause for the on gesture listener. Remember when we created button listeners and those kind of things, we could click the little red light bulb and it would add the implements command to it. I have not found what to type so that we can click on something and have it put this in there automatically. So I'm going to type it manually. I'm going to say implements, a gesture detector, and a listener for that. So I'm going into the main activity, and where it says extends, I'm going to add an implements clause. Gesture detector dot gesture detector listener on gesture listener. So now I've implemented that, but I get an error. The reason I'm getting an error is because I have not implemented methods that are required whenever I want to use this listener. If you're going to have a listener, you must, if you want to have this listener, you must type code to create 6 different events. Now, in this case, you can save yourself a little grief because the little red light bulb will help you. If you click the little red light bulb, it'll say, well, what do you want to do? I want to implement the required methods. If I click on that, it goes, which ones? Your answer is all of the above. So here's the 6 methods: on down, on show press, on single, on scroll, on long, and on fling. You must implement all 6. I experimented last night. I deleted them one at a time, and every time I delete one, I got an error. So you must implement all 6, even if you don't expect to process a long press. And there it did, built it for me. On down, on show, on single, up. Okay. Scroll, long press, flick. So I got them all. And they all return true or false or whatever. I would leave it alone unless you're going to implement one of these. And ultimately, I am going to implement one of these, or all of them, just to show you the sequence that they occur in. So now you've got a method, and up above here, what do you want to do when the user touches the screen? And we'll talk about what each one of these does and how show press is different than on down, single tap up, on scroll, on long press, and on fling. How can we, what are each one of those worth? Before we do that, notice there's one missing, and that's my double tap. If you wish to invoke double tap, unfortunately, it's a different listener. So to make this a little easier to read, I'm going to move it down, then you can type a comma, and you can also implement the gesture detector on double tap listener. Why is that one different? There's a pretty good reason for that. Now you get an error again, because guess what? If you're going to implement that, it's a couple of methods, 3 actually, that have to be invoked. So another way you can do this, I discovered in my notes, was Control-I. On a Mac, I'm using Command. I hope that works. Nope. So I'm going to stick with the red light bulb. But in Windows, you can press Control-I, and you'll get the same dialog box in one click or one keystroke. But here's the 3 that I need. And the real key is this first one, the single tap confirmed method. If you're going to allow a double tap, what's the difference between a double tap and a single tap? There's 2 of them, but how does the code know that, oh wait, it's only a single? If there's a potential for a double, then there's a new method called single tap confirmed that said, I've given him enough time, he hasn't hit a double yet, so it must not be a double, go ahead. If you're implementing on double tap, this is where I put my code for single tap once it's confirmed. Android has said it's just a single tap. This is where I put it instead of up here. If you put it up here and then it turns out to be a double, it'll execute both. It's probably not what you want to do. Maybe it is. Right. So this is the key here. It brings in the on double tap. That's nice. The on double tap event, I read about it and I don't completely understand what it does. So I'm just going to leave it alone. But if you want to implement double tap, and I think I did ask you to in the project, then this is where your single tap code should go. Once it's confirmed that it's a single tap, here's what I want you to do. Now, I just want to test these to make sure that they work pretty good. Right? And to see also some of the side effects that come out of these. So for each one of these, I'm going to go into my context here and click my label and give that beast a name. Call this TV results. And then, because I practiced this and I know I want it, I'm going to add a button. I'm going to put my button down here in the lower right-hand corner, and I'm going to call the button BTN clear. By the way, I need to apologize because in my Unit 5, I said create another button called the cancel button. And I thought about that's a dumb name. Should be clear. So I marked it wrong on all of yours. So you have to fix it. What's it doing? Why is it not letting me type?
You're not clicking on the right side after selecting
The text will be clear. I double clicked it, and then I can get this little shortcut menu. BTN clear. All right, now back to my code. In my code now, and this is another technique you might want to consider implementing from now on, whenever you have objects on the screen that you're going to refer to, like my text view, I'm going to access that text view from every one of those on methods down there, and that's what, 9 of them? So I need to make my text view class level. One thing that many people will often do is define all of their screen objects class level. So I'm going to create a text view called TV. And that's called TV results. And I might as well do the button while I'm at it. Button is BTN clear. And then on create, I'm going to create a method called link screen objects. I wonder. I just noticed there's a nice red lightning light bulb here. You're going to create it for me? Create a method. Go. It's void. Perfect. Per all. That's neat. See what happens when you wonder? Good things happen. All right. So in here, all I want to do is say that TV results is equal to, and let's link them. You've done this before, so I'm going to shut up.
Can't believe it's the end of October already.
Excuse me?
Can't believe it's the end of October already.
I can't believe all the stuff I got to do before you guys get out of here. Okay, so now I've linked those together, so I should be able to create listeners for them. So now, and I might as well create the listeners right inside here. So my btn clear dot set the on click listener to this. Get the error, and now I need to implement the main activity, and then I need to do that. Okay. Thank you. So there's my on click, and all clear is going to do is say tv.setText or text TV results dot set text to the empty string. Just clears out my screen so I can do different gestures and see the results of each one. Otherwise, it just keeps scrolling, and after a while, I run out of room. All right, so nothing exciting. Now inside here, I want to simply either toast. No, I don't want to toast. I want to add to my text view just a message that this is the on down event. And I think I want a \n in there because I keep appending these. What you're going to see is when we do a gesture, it is going to result in 1, 2, 3, sometimes even more of these events occurring. And you need to have a pretty good handle on what gets caused by what. That will also help you, if you're doing some more advanced applications, decide which one of these events to use. which are the appropriate ones. So there's my TV results, and I want to return true. If you return true, that basically says, I've handled it. It's done. It doesn't seem to make a big difference until you get into some of these singles and downs and long presses. As you'll see, the events that occur, sometimes you get other ones in between. So now I'm going to copy that into every one of my events and just change the title. So here's a show press. Notice it doesn't have a return. I have to remember not to give it one. Why is this one different? I don't know. I didn't write it. And what is on show press for? We'll read about it in a minute, but let me get some of the noise out of the way here. So now every time I execute one of these gestures, it's going to tell me what's executed. Let's see if it works. Now what's also tricky here, so the other challenge, and sorry there was a pause and I had to run out real quick. The other challenge is on an emulator simulating some of these events. It's not too tough for a tap. Oh, darn. Was that a great example or what? Back to my notes. Back to the prep here. We added the double tap listener. We also need to declare a class level variable to manage our gestures. Right. So I need another class level variable that uses a gesture detector compat. Sharing with Reen before class that they've changed this on me. That class didn't exist. They're trying to make these gestures easier for us to use, so that's good. This one is compatible across all levels of devices from 23s all the way down to 2s. Maybe 1s for that matter. So I need one of those. So now back to the code. So I need a class level variable that is a gesture detector compat. What happens if I use the other one? Might not work. This one I know works. Stole it from your book. And I'm just going to call that GD. And yes, I could make these private. In my notes it talks about private, so all of my class levels could be private. Probably not a bad idea. And then what do I do with that? Instantiate it, but where? Probably in form load, or on create, excuse me. And what's interesting I found is that the compat part of that is not included in the implement statement. You implement gestures, but you instantiated gesture detector compat. Now where does that go? It goes into a method that we still have to type called the on touch event. This one's weird. It's another one that I have not figured out a way for you to bypass manually typing it. So I have to create another event in order for my gestures to be detected, and notice that it goes back to the GD and uses that. So somehow I now got to get two things on the screen at the same time. So let's collapse this and see how well I can type. Where it goes doesn't really matter. It is a private Boolean on touch event that uses a motion event. Call it whatever you want. GD is that gesture detector compat I just declared on touch event. Link it to the event so that this links the event itself to the gesture detector that's going to process it somehow.
It's public.
Thank you. And then finally a return our super. Remember, the super means the event that this is, not the event, the class that this is built on. Whatever that is, but it's another one of those you can't leave out. Then there's the final step, and that's instantiating this whole mess. So up here, after I link my objects, I could probably do that in there. Set the double tap listener to this. Yeah, I think I can do that in my linking here. This one gets a double this. It needs two parameters of who it's listening to, I guess, and who it's responding to. So there's a double this. And we've already written the code for all of these, so there's nothing to instantiate. And yes, I tried typing those and right-clicking with the red light bulbs didn't work. And finally, we need to set our on-touch listener for double tap to this. There's all kinds of programs that I can write without ever having to look in a book. But I tell you, when it comes to mobile programs, it's just too difficult to do. Now, hopefully, my gestures will be sensed. Uh-oh. There it goes. All right. Here's a touch. Now, what I expect to happen when I touch is I should see the event that I caused, so a single tap up or a single tap confirmed or something should appear. And I should clear that. Probably not worth rerunning though, but for next time. So I'm going to clear it and do that again. Notice that when I do a single tap, it causes 3 events. First of all, a down event. A down event is not something that you can cause all by itself. Because what are you going to do, sit there and hold it forever? Something has to happen. It either becomes a long press or a single tap. The down event never happens by itself.
So there should always be a down event.
There will be a down event for every one of these things that we do. They all start with a down event. And then I let go. And at that point it said he's never tapped again, so that single tap confirmed occurred. If I hadn't included my on double tap listeners, the single tap confirm event does not occur. But because we have a double tap, it does occur. I believe in my notes I've documented all these. Here's a single tap causes a down, single tap up, single tap confirmed, as long as you have included the double tap listener. Okay, the double tap causes, oh my goodness, really? See, this is where the clear button comes in. A down event, an up event for the single tap. Then it said, oh, he did it again, this is a double tap. And then it sneaks in these double tap events, and then there's one more down for the second one. But this is where you write your code. At that point, it knows it's a double tap. These double tap events, I think I described them somewhere. They allow the user to sense if the user has moved the mouse in between. Because every one of these events allows you to sense where it occurs. And so this double tap event, you could check it, see what the numbers were, and then check it again on the second tap to see where it was. You can also do that on the down events and see where they were. So I haven't figured out the use of these events. We've documented that they occur, and that they occur in between the taps somewhere. If you can find a use for that, maybe it'll come in handy. I can't imagine one right now. All right, if we do a long tap, push and hold, notice how there was a delay between those. The show press event kicked in. You'll see with many apps, if you push and hold, you'll see this little kind of a exploding circle comes out from there, or the screen changes color, just so that the user can see that I sensed that you're holding. Again, not too many people put stuff in here. And then there's the long press event, and this is where the code for that one goes. But again, notice as Reen said, every single event that we're causing here has a down event. So there's the long, we've done the double. All that's left is the fling. Oh, wait a minute, what about all those other events? There's side effects. Okay. Now comes the fun one. I'm going to try to do a fling. This is the tricky one with the mouse. Works really nice on a device. I did bring the device in if you want to play with it a little bit. But let's see if I can pull this off here. Fling, there it goes. It wasn't too bad. So notice once again, there's a down, and then there's a scroll, 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 scroll. Jeez. And then finally it said, oh, you're done. That must be a fling. Because you moved in between the processes. Most of the code goes here. In the intermediate class, if there would be such a thing, because I don't think we're going to get that far, I wrote code that says if you're in an on scroll event, it grabs a picture. So if my finger goes down on the picture and I'm flinging, I'm really dragging it, and it actually moves the picture on the screen, changes its XY coordinates. So if you want to provide some kind of a feature where, there's a game I wrote for my granddaughter, she drags a picture onto the appropriate number. There was a lot of processing behind that. Did she touch inside of a picture when she started? Yes, she did. Then make that thing follow her picture till she lets go. Did she let go on top of the right number picture? So if she's got 3 little ducks, did she drop it on a 3? The answer is yes, then replace the 3 with the ducks. Otherwise, just snap it back to where it came from. Sounds simple. But it was the scroll event that lets that mouse or that image follow your finger as you're scrolling, because you can change it so that the top of the picture correlates with where your finger is, or the middle of the picture, or whatever you choose to do. For our purposes, you want the fling event. You want to know that it was a fling, and it doesn't matter which way you fling. I can still, do these kind of things. It's just a big old long scroll. But most people, when they fling, don't do that, because that's more like a custom gesture. Most people, when they fling, it's left, right, up, down, doesn't matter. It's still a fling.
Also, when you get the fling, it gives you your starting point and your ending.
Getting to that. So that would be nice to know. And it's not just the fling. Every one of these events that we can respond to has a parameter. If you look at the code, so here is my on down. There's an E parameter. Show press, E parameter. Why would I care where it is? Well, if I want to display a little picture that senses, a little explosion icon, I need to know where to put it. And here's my single tap up event, has the same thing. Let's start with the single tap confirmed event. Instead of just displaying that it was a single tap confirmed, let's add Well, you can do this. I don't like it too much, but let's do it real quick so you can see how ugly it is. Two-string. Remember that every class in Android, in Java, has a two-string method, as long as you, well, even your classes have a two-string method. They're just ugly until you define your own. This one's ugly even though it has been defined. So let's see what that does. So we did a single tap up. I should still see all the other events occur, but I get a little more information, way too much information on that last one. Which action was it? What's an action down occurred? This is a down. Right? So even though it's an up, it was caused by a down. And then there's an X here that's 486 and a Y that's 612. And then a bunch of stuff I don't care about.
The tool type finger, it's because you can use the edge of your palm.
Oh, really?
You can use more than one finger.
Wow.
Also tells you how long it was held.
So ton of stuff hiding in there. That's the something to keep in the back of your head. But what's more important, I think, is to pull stuff out. So instead of a two-string, I could say, get me the X coordinate. And that'll just give me the number of where across on the screen did I tap. And then I could concatenate that with a comma and a space and concatenate that to the E get Y. And it should be a little easier to read. So if I go way up here, the numbers should be relatively small. They're at 38 across, 114 down. Pretty high resolution. What do we got down here? Click. 182 across, 1,757 down. So I think my resolution here is about 2,000. 1775 is about as far as it seems to go. I can go way over here and kind of get an idea that where X position is 1,000 across, so about 1,000 across and 1,700 down on this emulator. This is also a halfway decent way to find out how big a screen do I have. Click on here if you can find the right click corner. Still off the edge.
It's really hard with your finger.
Now, what happens if I click on the clear event? Wouldn't that cause a tap of it, a gesture? No, because it has a click event defined, and it's an object. The question was, if I didn't define the on-click handler, the listener for that, would it still sense the tap? I don't know. I haven't tried that.
Should.
If there's no
Not
listener for
captured
that,
anywhere else.
maybe.
Or
Okay.
maybe it's still, maybe it's detecting it and then it's clearing it.
Clearing it afterwards, that's a possibility. Well, that one we can test without too much trouble, because when I click on clear,
Just disable it.
I can take this out. Wrong language, HTML. Okay. And just say something like TV results dot clear, or
Append.
set text append. Thank you. So now I can touch on it right away and I can get this message. Question is, will I see the tap messages before? You could Google it and hope you find it with our right answer.
Nope.
So no, on the button. Now again, I'll let you decide if you really care. But what happens if I don't define an on-click listener for this? Does it still respond, or does it recognize that it's an object? Obviously, buttons, they might be special, but for images, if I can pick up an image and drag it, I must be able to long press or hold on that beast. So the pictures are a little different, images
It's an
are
image
different.
until you define a listener.
Probably,
Technically.
I'm guessing it's the listener that has stuff to do with it, but I don't have a straight answer for that. But why would you have a button that doesn't have a listener? So this works the way we want it to because the button tap or click event overrides the tap event. So every one of these, including the down, okay, what I did with my granddaughter's program in here, I wrote logic to say if I'm on a picture. Then I set a flag and say, okay, start moving stuff. But if I'm not on a picture, it just ignored it, basically. So if she started in the middle of nowhere and started to drag, it didn't do anything. So that was on down, I checked, are we on a picture? On show press only occurs between the down and the long press. That's the only time that event ever occurs. So if you want to do something in between, you can. But I have never used that one. And no, you can't delete it. But you can leave it to return false because it'll just say, I didn't handle it. Hopefully somebody else will.
No return.
Or no return, just
Yeah,
take the
that's what
code
it
out.
was.
Yep. Single tap up has an E event. On scroll has multiple E events. Motion objects, excuse me. And it has a distance. Now those I didn't analyze too much, but what I really cared about was this first one. That's where I was doing my pictures. Where am I? Where am I? And drag the picture or move the picture's XY to follow it. And as she was moving, the picture would follow her finger. It was pretty cool. The guy I learned all this stuff from, it actually was an iOS, did the same kind of thing. And as he moved, he left little dots, but they would stretch out and they would fade away after a while. So he was leaving this tail, kind of a comet tail thing. That's what he called his app, was Comet. He'd drag and it would make a comet tail, and he'd drag a different way, make a comet tail, and it'd fade away after a while. So all kinds of cool effects you can have with these. Long press, you can tell where if you need to. The final one that I want to take a look at is fling. Notice that fling has two motion events. Where did you start? Where did you end? And two velocities. How fast did you fling? Are you flinging or are you moving? So you can actually set parameters in here. Say, if the velocity is, you'd have to experiment and do some reading because I haven't played with the velocity. If the velocity is too slow, then it's not a fling. You can set the fling parameters if you wish to say it's too slow, doesn't count. Got to fling faster than that or I'm going to ignore you. That one you can experiment with if you wish. It's not part of the assignment. What I really want to take a look at is E1 and E2. So here's my fling event, and I'm actually going to display both of those parameters separately on lines at the end. So on fling start, I don't need two of them, do I? Nah. Let's do on fling start. Now I remembered what I wanted to do. Here I want to say start is x equals plus the E1 dot get x plus a comma and a space, I'm sorry, and a y, no, we don't even need that. Y equals so this will say something on fling event underneath it. The start is at this coordinate, the y, xy. And then the end
I wonder if it takes the average velocity.
is the 2. You can calculate the average velocity. I've seen that. Okay, so this is going to tell me where did I start and where did I end. So we run that. And do a fling. and I started at 283.75, so somewhere over here, and I ended over here, and I did a halfway decent job of going up and down. But when you're flinging for your app, when you're flinging pictures left and right, do you care if they go up a little bit? No. And I'm going to leave the logic to how do you know if they went left or how they went right? Up to you. But those two numbers, those four numbers, will give you a clue which way they were flinging. So very handy pieces of information that you can use to respond to in different ways the flings.
You're just doing left and right fling. Do you really need the Y coordinates, or can you just
You could ignore, I'm just printing them here for fun
right?
so that you can see them and see what they have in them. Notice that they are floats and they are very, very specific.
Yeah.
Out to the 10,000ths of a pixel or whatever the heck that is. Well, this one should be interesting. Let's do a circle. Oops, doesn't clear anymore. Okay, hurry up and do a circle. Too late, too many scrolls, and no, there's no way to scroll this unless you use a scrollable text view. Then you can scroll through it. But because I was drawing in a circle, notice how many scroll events there are. That's why it seems like that picture is attached to my mouse.
Okay, every time
And
you
then in
change-
version 75 of my program, I created a second picture that had a little shadow behind it. And so the original picture was flat and it laid on the screen, but when you pick it up and drag it, it replaces it with the shadow picture, which makes it look like it's lifted off the screen. And then when you drop it, it goes back to flat again. So all these cool little things you can do with the different versions of the program. And now my granddaughter's 4 and she won't even play with the darn thing because she knows how to count to 5. And she knows what the numbers look like. So there's your intro to gestures. All those can make your device respond to different things. Obviously, you'd have to document these someplace to say, what do I do when I fling? Though most people, when you see a picture, what do they do with it? Fling, fling, and try to do things with it. Fling up, fling down. What happens if you pinch? Well, there's no pinch here. I think pinch is one of those custom ones that they talk about in chapter 23. Pinch is not a default event.
Use a corner of your side of your palm too.
Never try that.
There's a screenshot on more new forms.
Questions? All right, rest of the time is yours.